Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Dubious Writings, Part 6. And we're going to be dealing with the last gospel, or the last known written gospel of the four gospels that are in the Bible, the New Testament. And this is the gospel according to John. The gospel according to John was believed to have been written between 100 AD and 125 AD. According to a calculation, that will be about 70 years after the crucifixion of Jesus, based on the Christian story. So my conclusion actually is that the writer of the gospel according to John just improved upon what he had heard and what he had read in earlier gospels. I mean the three earlier gospels and other gospels that did not make it into the Bible. But the Christians will argue that it was an eyewitness account. So imagine an eyewitness account that was recorded only 70 years after the event. But for the sake of argument, let us assume that this is an eyewitness account. We're going to start to look at this from the end of the gospel according to John. Actually, this is what I'm going to look at first, because there is an interesting quotation at the end. The writer of the gospel according to John is speaking of his source, the source of the information and the accounts that were recorded in the gospel according to John. So if we look at John chapter 21 verse 24, it says, "This is the disciple who is bearing witness about these things, and who has written these things, and we know that his testimony is true." So basically, he was trying to vouch for the truthfulness of his source, which he claimed was a disciple of Jesus, peace be upon him. So let us quickly look at the information that this source gave the writer of the gospel according to John. Let us look at John chapter 4 verse 7. It says, "There came a woman from Samaria to draw water. Jesus said to her, 'Give me a drink.'" Verse 8 says, "For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food." Verse 8 says, "For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food." So I guess his disciples, including this source. Now, a conversation ensued between Jesus, peace be upon him, and this woman. And that conversation lasted from verse 9 back and forth, of course, until verse verse 26. So from verse 9 to verse 26, there was this back and forth conversation between Jesus, peace be upon him, and this woman he met, or this woman of Samaria who came to draw water at a well. Then we see in verse 27, "Just then his disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking with a woman, but no one said, 'What do you seek?' or 'Why are you talking with her?'" So in other words, they did not question the woman, neither did they question Jesus. And as we saw in verse 8, that none of the disciples was present. But somehow, miraculously, we see the details of the conversation between verse 9 and verse 26. All of the things that were said back and forth between Jesus, peace be upon him, and this woman, despite the fact that there was no other person around. What a reliable source. Let's go on to the next one. In the same chapter 4, verse 48, actually before 48, is actually the event between an officer and Jesus, where the officer came to Jesus to ask him to heal his son, to come with him and heal his son that was sick. So, in 48, Jesus said to him, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe." 49 says, the official said to him, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Jesus said to him, 50, "Go, your son will live." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went on his way. As he was going down, his servants met him and told him that his son was recovering. So he asked them the hour when he began to get better, and they said to him, "Yesterday, at the 7th hour, the fever left him." The father knew that that was the hour when Jesus said to him, "Your son will live." So basically, this disciple who gave the information that I just read to the writer of the Gospel according to John went with this official to his house and recorded the conversation between the official and his servants, and of course ran back to join Jesus and the rest of the disciples. What a good source. Next one. The next one is in John chapter 9, verse 6. Now from 1 to 6 details how Jesus and the disciples were passing by a blind man, and the disciples were quizzing him about how the blind man came to be blind, whether he was a sinner or his parents were sinners. So after that conversation, verse 6, having said these things, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, "Go and wash in the pool of Siloam." So he went and washed and came back seeing. It's very subtle, but the problem with this passage is that the man was blind. I have no doubts that Jesus performed miracles, but the man was blind. But he walked to a stream. A blind man walked to a stream unaided, washed his eyes and came back seeing. This is not to doubt that Jesus performed miracles, but that story is dubious. So this concludes the series. I've done 6 parts now, and I'm yet to hear anything from any Christian. Hopefully I'll hear something this time. Assalamu alaikum.